organizer and a journalist were arrested on separate occasions. This has nothing to do with political persecution, says the police. And not just one, but two callers will usher in the new year. Pantone Caller Institute says the marriage of the two offers hope and strength. We begin tonight with experts raising hope that a post-holiday surge in COVID-19 cases may actually be avoidable. The team isn't even discounting the possibility that quarantine level in Metro Manila might be relaxed early next year. Camille Samonte with a big story.
The health department is bracing for a possible surge in COVID-19 cases during the holidays. But an expert from the UST and UP Octa research says Filipinos can still be merry and prevent a possible spike in infections. Biologist Father Nicanor Austriaco tells 1PH Wagpo that alfresco dining and limiting the number of visitors are highly encouraged this holiday. Aside from social distancing, the expert said the public must avoid prolonged contact with other guests even in small social gatherings.
So within 2 meters, if you're talking to someone and you're talking to someone who is COVID positive and you're talking to them for 15 minutes and they're within 2 meters from you, that is defined as a close contact. That means that the chances that you get infected are high. So we try to distance ourselves from each other.
Father Austriaco also warned the public from being complacent when attending Simbang Gabi as churches are expected to be more crowded. Father Austriaco admits that there is a lag in the country's COVID-19 data which they use for research. In an interview with 1PH, contact tracing czar in Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong asked the UP Octa research team not to release their findings immediately. Magalong says such reports affected Baguio City's tourism, which was tagged by the UP Octa research as COVID-19 hotspot.
During the time na nagsalita yung Octa, doon na yung mababa na yung case namin. Pababa na yung case namin eh. Unfortunately, yung data nila was 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. So naapektuhan talaga kami. Sana nga, bago nila i-release, dapat ipakita muna sana nila sa IATF o NTF.
But research fellow Professor Guido David says all their findings are submitted to the IATF before release.
We respect Mayor Benji a lot. He's a very intelligent individual. He manages his city well. I mean, it's just unfortunate that we're seeing the spike. And as for the reports, yes, we do send the reports to IATF.
On One News agenda, David also notes that if COVID-19 figures improve, the quarantine level in Metro Manila may be eased to MGCQ by the first quarter of 2021.
That's meant by Yusek Berhere. If we're getting mga 100 cases per day sa NCR, that could be we're already at the low risk category, and we could already move to MGCQ.
As for recent reports that minors are supposedly super spreaders of the coronavirus, David said this remains a theory and is still up for further study. David explains that under the super spreader theory, researchers from all over the world are looking into the possibility that 20% are responsible for infecting the other 80%. UP Octa research noted that the profile of the 20% is still unverified and studies have remained conflicting or inconclusive. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Now, as vaccine makers around the world race to develop COVID-19 shots, local researchers are looking into a cheaper alternative that does not require cold storage: yeast. Now, speaking to 1PH program Wagpo, microbiologist Father Nicanor Austriaco of the UP Octa Research Group said they are working on genetically engineering yeast as an oral vaccine substitute. Austriaco said the yeast tablets can simply be taken with a glass of milk for a week, which will then trigger immunity against COVID-19. Human trials could begin by the first quarter of next year. Now, some doctors, however, called for tempered expectations on COVID-19 vaccines, noting that all are so far still in their trial stage. Experts from the concerned doctors and citizens of the Philippines told the chiefs on Wednesday that shots should not be advertised as completely safe ahead of full trial results.
Kasi people might think when you get the vaccine, hindi ka na magkaka-COVID. That's the wrong impression, no? The vaccines were made so that if you do get COVID, you won't get a severe infection.
This is precisely what UK regulators are warning about. They are advising those with histories of allergies not to get Pfizer's COVID-19 shot. Britain's medicine regulators said there had been 2 reports of anaphylaxis and 1 report of possible allergic reaction since the rollout of the vaccine began this week. Not only is the health department calling for a different holiday celebration, it also urges Filipinos to give alternative gifts. Aside from face masks and face shields, the DOH suggests giving healthy food and exercise equipment as holiday presents. The agency also encourages do-it-yourself gifts to limit in-store shopping. Aside from that, they're advising against the use of torotot for the new year. Health Undersecretary Mirna Cabotaje explained that torotot or horns could spread COVID-19 as saliva is transferred to the device's mouthpiece. She suggests other noise-making instruments such as tambourines, drums, car horns, kitchen pots, or even piggy banks.
Huwag po tayong gagamit ng mga pangpaingay na gumagamit ng sa bibig that will cause the transfer of saliva. So, yung mga pito, yung mga torotot, bawal po ngayon yan. Kailangan nakamas pa rin tayo at nagso-social distance.
Speaking of New Year revelry, the DOH also clarified that local governments can still conduct community fireworks displays depending on their quarantine status. Health protocols must also be observed. The Trade Department reminds the public to purchase fireworks only from licensed manufacturers. Senators grilled the Environment Department over the ceaseless quarrying activities at the Marikina watershed, despite the recent massive flooding due to Typhoon Ulysses. But the agency defense did not sit well with senators. Mean Los Baños tells us how the hearing went.
A fuming Senator Cynthia Villar chided the Environment Department over a remark of one of its officials on protecting the Marikina watershed. Mines and Geosciences Bureau Director Wilfredo Moncano drew the ire of the senator when he said that the flooding brought by Typhoon Ulysses wouldn't be stopped even with the absence of urban developments and quarrying activities.
Even if the entire Marikina watershed is planted with 10-year-old mature trees, it will still require 9 times that area to absorb the water that was poured during Typhoon Ulysses.
This came as a dismissive remark to Villar and other senators.
Na-shock na naman ako sa inyong department kasi parang sinasabi nyo na pabayaan na lang kasi hindi kaya pag typhoon, yung kasing strong ng Typhoon Ulysses. I cannot accept that.
Pita naman natin yung enforcement natin. Mismo kayo nagsabi na non-compliant yung pagkarami-rami ng mga quarrying, mining, logging activities. So yung enforcement man lang, kitang-kita naman ang ebidensya, kalbong-kalbo na ang Sierra Madre kahit protected zone.
Setting up to fail dun sa pagprotekta ng watershed.
The senators also asked about the quarrying and mineral exploration being conducted in protected areas. They discussed the Masungi Reserve in Rizal, which is a part of the Upper Marikina watershed. A representative from the Upper Marikina River Basin Landscape said quarry groups were given permits way back 1980s. But it was only in 2011 that the area was declared a protected landscape. For his part, Environment Secretary Royce Matu said the agency has already suspended the mineral production sharing agreement of several quarry groups in Rizal last December 2. However, he admitted that some groups have not stopped operations.
Sinira ko yung mga barbed wire nila doon.
The local government of Rizal has once again appealed to DNR to ensure the stoppage of quarrying in their area for fear that the residents will suffer the consequences. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
We'll go for a quick break when the big story returns. Cities in Bulacan are following Valenzuela's footsteps. They want to revert to cash while the RFID system remains problematic. A House leader says they will stand their ground and insist that Associate Justice Marvic Leonen can only be ousted through impeachment. The details later. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Jess De Los Santos. It's not just Valenzuela City that's hot-headed over the recent heavy traffic in tollways. Bulacan town mayors are also seeking to revert back to cash lanes just until toll operators sort out problems with the RFID system. Gerard de la Peña has the report.
Traffic has been building up at the toll gates in Bulacan, especially during peak hours. Locals are putting the blame on the installation of RFID stickers at toll plazas. This is why mayors in Bulacan came up with a manifesto asking the NLEX Corporation to open up cash lanes while the RFID system is still being perfected.
Nangyari yan, ang haba ng pila. So, una, kasasaan niya yung gasolina. Tapos bumabagal ang flow ng goods and services dito sa Bulacan. So, siyempre, marami nagre-reklamo.
But the Department of Transportation distanced itself from the matter, leaving the problem at the hands of the Toll Regulatory Board and the NLEX Corporation.
Meron man silang enough na tawag nito, tools na para makipag-negotiate sa mga local government units.
For public policy think tank InfraWatch PH, the DOTR should be held liable as they failed to present solutions to alleviate the ordeal of motorists in the shift to cashless transactions.
What we had expected sana is DOTR to provide leadership on the matter. Ibig sabihin parang naghugas ng kamay po yung DOTR and TRB doon po sa local government action. We would have wanted to see DOTR to state na dapat the local government should back off because it impinges on the sanctity of contracts.
In his Facebook page, Valenzuela Mayor Rex Gatchalian called for the removal of toll gate barriers to ease traffic along NLEX. This follows the city's suspension of the operator's business permit over the RFID mess. The TRB said they are set to do this eventually.
So yung purpose ng barrierless, yan yung ultimate objective na. But we have to do this na tamang procedure. Kapag 1 kilometer ng queuing, ililift na nila ang barrier to improve the flow of traffic. Hindi magko-concentrate. Yun din ang subject ngayon ng audit na ginagawa ng.
The Senate is set to summon Transportation Secretary Art Tugade to explain the agency's response over the RFID mess. Public Services Committee Chairperson Senator Grace Poe has filed a resolution asking the DOTR to revisit and suspend cashless collection in tollways while things are being sorted out. Poe insisted that the system is not completely ready. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, We Are One News.
The lower house will insist on its exclusive jurisdiction to impeach an impeachable official as it hears the ouster bid against Associate Justice Marvic Leonen. House Deputy Speaker Rufus Rodriguez dashed the possibility that Leonen will be removed from office via quo warranto, similar to the case of former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. He says removal via quo warranto is unconstitutional and only makes the Constitution a dead-letter law. The Deputy Speaker also pointed out that news articles won't stand up in court. Leonen is accused of culpable violation of the Constitution for supposedly delaying the resolution of cases and betrayal of public trust for supposedly failing to file his statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth for 15 years.
So we in the House will insist on the constitutional provision that we have the power, exclusive jurisdiction, to be able to determine whether an official which is impeachable, who is impeachable, there is basis for the sending of the complaint and the articles of impeachment to the Senate.
These are the other big stories today. The palace assures that the 2021 national budget will be passed into law just in time for the new year. The Office of the President has yet to receive a copy of the spending plan, which has been ratified by Congress Wednesday night. But while they want to speed up the process, Palace spokesman Harry Roque said the President will scrutinize the bill and use his power to veto provisions if necessary. And now that the budget is off the hands of Congress, Camarines Sur Representative Elray Villafuerte has filed a bill seeking to extend the Bayanihan 2 law to cover the first half of next year. The Interior Department said authorities can enter private residences or establishments in areas under GCQ if protocols on mass gatherings are violated. In an interview on 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang, Interior Undersecretary Epimaco Densing said that even without an LGU ordinance, police or barangay authorities can ask violators to disassemble even in private settings. The PNP, however, is singing a different tune. Spokesperson Ildebrandi Usana said basis or consent is needed before police can enter private confines. Otherwise, they can only give fines or warnings in accordance with laws or local ordinances. Filipino grade 4 students ranked last among 58 countries in an assessment for mathematics and science proficiency. According to the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study 2019, the Philippines scored 297 in math and 249 in science. 19% were in the low benchmark for math, 13% for science, implying limited knowledge and understanding. Now, as the country beefs up its Air Force with 6 new Black Hawk choppers, the Philippines also boosted its military might with additional equipment from the U.S. to China's dismay. But the Defense Department defended U.S. presence here. Their explanation in Pat Mangunes' report.
The Philippine Air Force has received 6 of the 16 Black Hawk utility combat helicopters worth 12 billion pesos. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana led the blessing of the brand new choppers procured from Poland. Lorenzana, together with Air Force officials, went on a test ride. He says these helicopters are more powerful than the Bell and Huey helicopters used by the armed forces of the Philippines.
Yung ating mga Hueys ay luma na, mga kampayan eh. Vietnam vintage pa yung mga yan, although na-upgrade nila now and then, but it's still Vietnam vintage, yung avionics, everything. So ito ngayon, ito pinakabago nilang helicopter, yung 70i. So it's big.
The Black Hawks have additional safety sensors to guide the pilot when flying over mountains and rough terrain. A unit can carry up to 15 individuals, suitable for combat missions and humanitarian assistance.
Ang daming differences na makikita nyo na makakatulong sa safety nung liparan natin. Most especially lalo na sa Pilipinas na madaming volcanoes, disasters.
The 10 remaining Black Hawks are expected to be delivered next year. To keep up with the modernization, the AFP upskilled their men with the use of upgraded equipment through the recent AFP joint exercises Dagit Pa.
This joint exercise, unilateral joint exercise of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, is really designed to enhance our operational readiness and upgrade our capability.
Last Tuesday, Lorenzana also received 1.3 billion pesos worth of gears and anti-IED equipment from the U.S. Defense Department. U.S. Defense Secretary Christopher Miller personally turned over the donation. A C-130 plane is also set to be delivered next week. This was in addition to their earlier donation of a Scan Eagle unmanned aerial system to the Philippine Navy worth over 700 million pesos. Lorenzana later defended the country's longtime ally from China, who is against the U.S. trips in Southeast Asian countries.
They are here to maintain the relationship with the Philippines because we have the MDT, saka matagal na silang ally, and they're doing just that. Ginagawa naman niya palagi nung pa eh. That is the opinion of the Chinese dahil ayaw nilang, ang tingin ko, ayaw nilang may nakikialam na mga foreign powers dito sa Southeast Asia.
China continues to be involved in a territorial dispute with the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries over the contested West Philippine Sea. For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
We'll go for a quick break. More of the biggest stories when you come back. Stay with us. Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. As the world commemorates International Human Rights Day, a Filipino journalist and an activist were arrested in separate instances after authorities raided their houses. But the PNP claims this is not political persecution. Marian Enriquez with a story.
This cell phone video shows members of the PNP CIDG searching the Quezon City residence of a known labor union organizer. Dayan Zapata took the video. She said armed policemen barged into their house around 2 a.m. while they were asleep. The police refused to answer who or what were they looking for and instead ordered them to lie down on the floor.
Pinasok nila yung kwarto namin without telling us anong nangyayari. Pumunta sila sa, essentially hinalugog na nila yung kwarto namin without showing us or without telling us why.
Zapata said it was only after the search when the officers presented a warrant addressed to his husband, Dennis Velasco, who supposedly owns rifles and ammunitions.
It's impossible kasi wala kaming use for firearms in our house. No? We don't even know mag-shoot even for a hobby. Wala kaming dahilan na magkaroon ng ganoong mga ammunition in our house. Obviously, tinanim yon.
Zapata said that this is a clear political repression as his husband is a known trade union organizer and labor rights advocate. The police said they seized guns, ammunition, and grenade from Velasco's house. Assisting lawyer Cristina Conti said that they will study the charges against Velasco. They will also file administrative, civil, and criminal counter charges as it appears that evidence were planted. They've also recorded violations on the conduct of serving the search warrant.
Kung susundin mo talaga yung rules of court at saka even the PNP operational manual, walang nasunod.
They also saw a red flag on the warrant itself, which indicates a search of Velasco's laptop and cell phone.
Hindi dapat siya subject of a search and seizure unless the allegation is it is being used for illegal purposes. Pero I cannot imagine paano magagamit ang cellphone at laptop sa illegal possession of firearms.
The PNP said this is not political persecution and that they are just doing their jobs.
As to the claim whether there were procedures that may have not been met, the family of Dennis Velasco can easily file maybe a complaint against our authorities, and the PNP is open for that.
Velasco was arrested as the world commemorates International Human Rights Day. Hundreds of activists marched to Menjola, Manila early Thursday morning to protest what they say is the government's rampant human rights violations. Groups like Bayan, Anak Bayan, Gabriela, and Kabataan called out the government for its supposed red tagging and arrests of activists.
Nagpaparatang ng walang batayan at walang ebidensya. So mapanganib po yun, no? Meron po tayong mga karapatan na dapat igalang. Anuman po ang ating paniniwalang pampolitika, hindi po maaari na ikaw ay ipakulong dahil lang sa iyong paniniwala.
But while the protests were held for Human Rights Day, one journalist was arrested this morning based on a Facebook post by the International Association of Women in Radio and Television. Manila Today Editor-in-Chief Lady Ann Salem was reportedly brought to the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group facility in Quezon City. PNP spokesperson Yusana declined to give comments on Salem's arrest and directed News 5 to coordinate with the CIDG instead. Salem is also the communications officer of the International Association of Women in Radio and Television. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Now time for the big stories in sports. A look at the game with Laura Lehman.
Thanks, Jess. As Barangay Ginebra celebrated their 13th franchise title, our PBA correspondent Carlo Pamentuan caught up with head coach Tim Cone for his thoughts after this team's historic win.
And, there was a lot of talk that we couldn't do this without the fans or without their cheers, and we really took that as a challenge to come out and try to stay disciplined and try to find ways to motivate ourselves without our fabulous fans. And But when it was all said and done, that was the number one thing. We really wanted to celebrate with our fans, and I hope they got a feel for it. I know they weren't here in the Coliseum, and like I keep saying, it was such a surreal experience, winning a championship and then looking around and going, well, who do we celebrate with, you know? And so all we had was we could celebrate with ourselves. Like I said, it was a special moment for us to win it for the fans, and I hope we can somehow celebrate it with them at some point. I don't know how, but maybe there is, but we'll see.
In boxing news, former world champion Nonito the Filipino Flash Donaire has pulled out of his scheduled WBC bantamweight title match against Emmanuel Rodriguez after testing positive for COVID-19. Donaire's original opponent, Nordine Aubaali, likewise backed off after contracting the virus. This is the second time that COVID-19 has derailed the main event of the December 19 card. Filipino prospect Raymart Caballo is now being considered to take Donaire's spot in the main event, pending negotiations. And that's it for the latest in the world of sports. My name is Laura Liman. Catch us again tonight as we wrap up the game. Back to you, Jess.
Thank you, Laura. Now, Facebook is facing antitrust lawsuits in the U.S., which could lead to a breakup of its social media platforms. 48 attorney generals across 46 states filed the suit against the social media giant, which also owns photo-sharing platform Instagram and messaging service WhatsApp. This follows a suit filed by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, which seeks an injunction that could force Facebook to divest its assets, including the two other social media apps. The lawsuits claim Facebook used its dominance and monopolistic power to snuff out competition following its acquisition of Instagram and WhatsApp. Facebook now becomes the second big tech company to face major legal hurdles comparable to the lawsuit faced by Microsoft in 1998. Now, users in the country reported having problems with Facebook Messenger earlier this evening. Some have also reported downtime in their Instagram accounts. A deviation from tradition, the Pantone Color Institute selects two colors for the year of 2021. Ultimate Gray, aside from encapsulating the uncertainty that lies ahead due to COVID-19, it is found on pebbles which stand the test of time and encourage composure, steadiness, and resilience. It's contrasted by illuminating a bright and cheerful yellow sparkling with vivacity, imbued with solar power. Pantone said the marriage of the two colors should deliver a message of strength and hopefulness. It evokes deeper feelings of thoughtfulness with the optimistic promise of a sunshine-filled day. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. 15 days ago before Christmas, tuloy pa rin ang Pasko, kapatid. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Good evening.